Okay, let's see if I can get this video to work correctly. The first one didn't. I'm talking about case problem 1 on EX66-6, and it's step 16A through F, and I'm going to cover the first one, step A. And in the problem, what they want to do is they want you to add summary statistics for the inventory data in this spreadsheet. And let me offset these so that I can come back to it. But yeah, to the inventory spreadsheet. But they say add it, and that's actually an error. What you need to do is add summary data using the subtotal function in this little table right here, showing inventory values on the report tab. And so let me tab through here. And so um, let's just quickly review the subtotal function. This is the subtotal function in Excel, and it's sort of a self-serving function. It's actually built into the functionality of pivot tables and Excel tables. And what the subtotal function will do is it will return various functions across a range of cells or data within a worksheet. And the syntax is equals subtotal, which is the function name, and then the function number, which actually corresponds with function numbers that are built into Excel and that you even use in other functions. So I provided you with a link to the Microsoft website. The subtotal function is also covered in the text. And when it returns a subtotal in a list or a database, and it's generally easier to create a list with subtotals by using the subtotal command. It's kind of interesting because within Excel, when you're working with a table, the subtotal function allows you to do things like to calculate the average, or to count the number of values within a column, or a record or series of records within the database. And each of these functions in Excel actually correspond to function numbers. So way back, long ago, in the early days of Excel, there were no names for functions. You actually had to use function numbers instead. And so, for example, the function number for count A, which you're actually doing in step A of the item number 16 in cell D5, apply the subtotal with the count A function to count the number of records in the part ID inventory. And so the function number that we would use is 3. And so this is a good example of what that function would look like when it's completely written. Subtotal parentheses 3, which is the count A function, which corresponds with count A, and then the inventory sheet or tab and the part ID column. And this is using structured references. So let's take a look at how that works. And so this is D5. And again, it's an error. You should insert the summary statistics for the inventory data in the report tab. And so one of the things I've mentioned before is make sure that if you're not confident in typing these functions, use the automation. There's a couple of ways to approach it. So we can go to formulas and then insert the function. And then since we most recently used the subtotal function, it appears there, and we can click OK. And then let the function's argument dialog box or this little wizard help us. And so it knows it's using the subtotal function. It wants to know the function number. So the function number is 3. And the function number, again, even though this isn't telling us that that function number will return count A. It does. And the next argument we have to enter is the reference. And so what we want to do is we need to reference the inventory worksheet and the part ID column. Now, that's one way to do this. You can just click, and then what it does is it shows us here a preview that it's actually looking across an array of, or this whole column of records, and it's counting them, and right now there's a total of 533, and then we click OK, and then that value is placed there. Now I think you have to turn on some filters and sort, etc., and that value will be a little bit different, but this demonstration gives you an idea. So that's one way of doing it, right? But if you're pretty confident, there's another way, and it's somewhat, actually it doesn't require so much confidence. It's a little bit easier. If you know the function's name, in this case, you type in the cell, and once you type the equal sign, Excel knows that you want to enter a function or a formula. And so we want to enter the subtotal function. And then what it does is it looks through the workbook, and it gives us, it basically gives us a list of the different types of functions that are available to us. In this case, we want to use count A, and then we have to enter a comma, and then we have to enter a reference. And we know that what we're looking for is data on the inventory tab. So we can, if we simply type IN, then Excel will present us with a list of functions that begin with IN, or any tables which correspond with that same string, which in this case it's the inventory table, and then we just double click and it inserts it. And because we're using structured references, if we then enter a left brace and then select part ID, which is that column, and double click and then close it with a right brace and a parentheses and then return, then we get the same result. And so that's basically utilizing the subtotal function. When you're working with a table like this and you go to the table tools or to design, and you turn on a total row, actually if you wanted to sum something like this, like in this list, see this whole list, that corresponds with, if you look at that little list of functions, when we use subtotal, it lists all of these functions in the order that they might correspond with function numbers. So each of these corresponds and has its own function number, believe it or not. It's just that you don't see it, and it's somewhat transparent. So I hope this video kind of explains things. If you have any more questions, post them on the forum, because I don't mind recording a quick video as long as my computer cooperates.